Hello and welcome to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton, and welcome back to I guess the penultimate Toffee Blues podcast for this season. And I'm still very much in I guess recovery mode, should we say, from Sunday. Quite a lot. Quite there was quite a lot to process, shall we say? But yeah, I'm sure we'll dive into all of that. But I'm joined once again by Harry as usual. How you doing, mate?
Yeah. Do you know what? I think the processing is the word of the podcast, right? And I dare say everyone tuning into this, has it actually? I'm gonna start off with a question to you, Al. Like, has it actually settled in? I know we were talking into the build up on last week's pod about like, has it settled in? We're leaving. Now that it's happened, has it settled in? Because I don't know if it has for me.
Yeah, I don't think it has either. Yeah, it's an interesting one because once everything was over, and that's how I'm kind of starting at the end here a little bit. But once
Yeah.
everything was over and just the ground was everyone was filing out, there was still quite a few people milling about on the pitch or whatever. But I was standing in the stand and I was just kind of thinking, I think I'm okay with this now because I know the ground's still going to be there. It's
Yeah.
almost like you wanted to celebrate it being like it was for that day because the fact it's very unlikely it's ever going to be like that again. It's gonna, you know, no, not to stamp down on anything, but it's gonna take a lot of growth for the women's game, I think, for it to ever
Mhm.
reach the emotion levels that Sunday produced. But one day, who knows? But
Yeah.
yeah, as it is, it's probably never going to be like that for a very long time at least. And I think once I'd soaked all that up, it was a bit like I'm sure I'll be back in there one day just for a women's game, and I'll be able to look around and think of all my memories again. It's not going anywhere now, which I think was actually in the end a bit of a comfort for me. I might have made Sunday a lot
Mm.
harder than it actually was. So yeah, I think once the season's properly over, it's a bit odd. It does kind of feel like the season's already over based on Sunday, but
Yeah.
obviously there is still a game to go, which again we'll get into, I'm sure. But yeah, once the season's ended, and I think in a few weeks maybe it'll just hit me with a pang that like, oh, um, that really is the end. We're never going to be watching Everton's men's team playing Goodison again. So yeah, definitely I think still soaking it all up maybe.
I wonder, Al, if you know how, do you remember at school, like if you got a non-uniform day and there was always that kid that still turned up in their school uniform? I just wonder, like next season, first home game of the season, and we've got like Wolves or something at home, and someone still turns up at Goodison Park with their ticket trying to get into the ground. I think muscle memory might play a part for the first few months of next season, you know?
Yeah, all just parking up and around the ground, just like, oh God, I've got
Yeah,
miles to
fair,
walk now. But
fair way to go. Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, like I say, it was just an incredible day. I think it went about as well as any of us could have hoped. And obviously, once again, we've kind of got the unique experience there because you got me who was there, you who sadly had to watch it on telly instead. But
Yeah.
I kind of want to start with that. Really, I'd like to think that it came across really well. I've seen a lot of really good things said about TNT's coverage, like before
Yeah.
the game and after the game, um, and obviously during the game, which as I think we kind of predicted was almost a bit of a side note. Really, the actual game itself was hardly
Yeah.
a thriller. We for once kind of got things done pretty businesslike in the first half, and then Southampton had a few good spells in the second half, but never really looked like scoring too much. There was a couple of good saves from Pickford maybe, but it was fairly comfortable, and I think that's about as good as we could have hoped for. But yeah, do you think how did it come across just in general on the TV?
Do you know, I think pre-match very good. I that's when I put out on X about the fact that I'd kind of tipped my cap to TNT. I thought they did it very well. I felt marginally sorry for Southampton supporters watching that one on TV because I think bar flashing up the Southampton team, there was not a mention of them in the build. And you would understand why, by the way, because of the way it was built, because it was the farewell to Goodison, and ultimately Southampton have nothing with a capital N to play for, other than to turn up and be kind of like party poopers, which I mean, fair play to them. They played their part on Sunday perfectly because they have been how they've been for the majority of the season, which was pretty poor. There was something on comms. I think Ali McCoy said about it was being played like an exhibition match, and I think that must be Ali McCoy who has not watched Southampton play a game of football all season because I don't think it was a massive drop off from where they've been throughout their campaign. But in terms of the coverage, I thought there were some really lovely moments. Big shout out to Peter Reid for being absolutely off his tree on live TV at 11 o'clock in the morning. Like, I could just see, I think Lindsay Hipgrave, isn't it, that fronts TNT's coverage, was just like wanting to be anywhere else, wanting the turf of Goodison Park to swallow her whole because they'd made the mistake of giving him a live microphone. And there was a very kind of uncomfortable balance of him visibly being one or two drinks away from sober, and also somewhat like flirtatious in a very kind of like uncle at wedding vibe,
Oh,
which yeah, there was that element where it was like, okay, it's a party atmosphere. But there was a great shot, by the way, of Duncan Ferguson and Phil Jagielka coming across like the road into Goodison Park and just being swamped and mobbed by fans. And I think, do you know what? If you couldn't be there, you would worry about how much of that atmosphere you were missing out on. And I think what they did very well was, I think when that lineup for the broadcast got announced, they announced, oh, Rio Ferdinand's going to be there, and you thought, "Oh, why is Ferdinand going to be there? Apart from the fact he works for TNT, but he did the initial bit with Lindsay, and then after that, it was very much like Jagielka, James Tarkowski, Duncan Ferguson, and as it should be, like it should be the Everton story told by Evertonians. We didn't need Rio Ferdinand talking about when he went there with the class of '92 and Sir Alex Ferguson's treble win in Man United side, because that's half of the media, particularly the other side of football in broadcasting. So yeah, in answer to your question, Al, it was the next best place to be other than at the ground was soaking it up, and they let it linger. And shout out to Darren Fletcher on comms, because when Z Cars hit, he said a line that was beautiful. He was like, this is not a game for words, like let's just listen to this, and or words to that effect. And rather than trying to get his clippable quotable commentary over, it was very much like, let's just soak the atmosphere in, and you kind of got to be there as like a bird's eye view. So whilst it was gutting to not be there for the final game out, I think they did it justice. Post match was awful. I didn't know TNT 7 was a thing until they cut away from the post-match stuff, and I wanted to see whether Paul McCartney was going to turn up and what David Moyes' speech was going to be, and Tony Bellew attempting to interview ex-players. So I had to catch all of that on YouTube afterwards, sadly. But the pre-match and the game itself, like great coverage, couldn't fault them really.
yeah, yeah, that's fair enough. Like I said, I did hear a few people saying about afterwards as well, not quite coming off as hoped. But yeah, to be fair, I do just want to quickly say about Southampton fans as well, as you mentioned there. Fair play to them as an away fan base. I saw a lot of people milling about early on, trying
Yeah,
to wade their way through the crowds, and I've seen so many people saying that Everton fans could not have been more accommodating and more friendly. And as we've been saying in the whole build up to it, I think most of us expected them to kind of just sell their tickets, because why wouldn't you?
yeah,
Like
I
with
thought
with
they
the
would.
money
Yeah,
stuff.
of course.
But there were so many people there. Like they
Yeah,
pretty much filled their away allocation, as you say, for a completely dead rubber game in which
yeah,
the limelight could not be further away from them. And yet they were clearly, a lot of them wanted to be there to soak it all up, and a lot of them stayed for the thing afterwards as well, like for
yeah.
the
Good on them.
concert and the interviews and all of that. And so fair play to them for appreciating just what a big day for football in general, I think it was. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, like you say, I think it was unbelievable outside the ground. I think I'll never forget what it was like pre-match. There was a few grumbles when the 12 p.m. kickoff was announced, but I think Sunday proved that you could put the game on at 3 a.m. or whatever, and Everton fans will still turn it into a party if
Yeah.
the occasion's permitting, because we got there just before 8 o'clock and there were already people queuing up for the pubs,
Wow.
and yeah, literally, and you know all the stuff was to get there for the coach by like 10 at the earliest. The streets were already completely full by 9 o'clock. We ended up back past a club shop because we'd just been kind of milling about. But yeah, and obviously it ended up being the case that the coach couldn't even be visible because there was that much blue smoke in the air. And so in a way, we were almost our own worst enemy for that because so many people missed the actual coach coming through just because of the sheer amounts of flares. But yeah, pre-match just absolutely extraordinary. And like I say, so many people were in the ground by the time I got in at like 11:30, before kickoff. Concourse is absolutely full. Park End bouncing, which
Yeah.
historically the whole line is that the Park End isn't quite the most like lively of places, but concourse I can guarantee you I've never seen it like that in the Park End. Absolutely bouncing. And I got to my seat and I'm just like, the stands are basically full. I know there's so many people already down in the concourse, and I know there's so many people outside. So it must just be like all those people outside must be the ones without a ticket. And
Yeah.
like I said, I was showing the overhead shots during the game, weren't there? And there's still so many people on Goodison Road. I couldn't believe it. Like I genuinely think like 70,000 there at least, probably more.
Yeah, they definitely said on TNT at one point they reckoned the police had said to TNT that there was a expected 10,000 fans without a ticket outside of the ground. So
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was
and
it
that,
was I could guarantee
yeah,
you it was more than that. More than that.
yeah, for sure, it looked it.
100%. And yeah, just absolutely unbelievable. First 5 minutes, it was just shaking in there.
Yeah.
And I'll always say that the Bournemouth final game was the loudest I've ever heard it, but Sunday wasn't far off. It's got to be said. It was
Mm.
just churning in there. And all four stands were like starting their own chants and all sorts. There was no real like unison to it a lot of the time. It was just everyone just singing whatever. And obviously the Gladys Street kind of took that on a little bit during the first half and bringing out all the old classics. As
Brilliant.
as as the rest of it kind of died down a little bit, but the Gladys Street just kept on going, bringing out all the old songs. And yeah, it turned out to be a celebration, which I think is
Yeah.
exactly what we all wanted it to be. And I do genuinely think, that the news helped that, the announcement that, the ground isn't actually going anywhere. It's just
Mm.
it's just a little bit it's going to be less of an uncomfortable change. And obviously it's still very emotional, but I think, as I say, it seemed a lot more of a joyous celebration of the times at Goodison rather than sadness that it's not going to be there anymore. So, yeah,
Yeah.
like I say, just what an amazing day.
What
Um,
on the point about how well it came across on TV, by the way, I was watching this on TV and covering it on X for the Toffee Blues, and I had my mum sat behind me, who we talked about my dad on last week's pod and how he was the reason that I got into supporting Everton. My mum could not care about football in the slightest, and so trying to explain to my mum that yes, David Moyes is the Everton manager again, because she remembers that from when I was a lot younger. And then also trying to explain to her the question that got asked a lot, Al, throughout the broadcast was, what is it they're chanting? And then having to say, they're chanting, feed the yak and he will score. And she's asking, which player is that about? And honestly, this went on, Al, the whole of the first half. And so it translated very well on TV. And what was even more humorous than hearing the Richarlison song and just so many great, it was the greatest hits. I said on X, it was the songbook of all songbooks, but then trying to explain that to a person who has zero interest in Everton was even funnier. So yeah, it was a great celebration. I'm glad, so glad for everybody that was in the ground, Al, as well, because and we could talk about the shortcomings. We've said on the pod before, haven't we, about have Everton Football Club done enough to celebrate the final season at Goodison? Scarves on seats. I can see you're sporting one. This kind of very limited range of memorial or memorabilia that's been bought out, and there was a lot of questions. And from what I did see of the post-match coverage, like, was it what fans would have booked if they were given the choice of how to send Goodison off. Maybe some would, maybe that it was a little bit falling short again. And we could focus on that. And I dare say, like, I dare say we want to keep this bright and positive because it's the first final game at Goodison in the last 3, 4 years that hasn't had some kind of jeopardy, life-defining misery attached to it, and actually that should be celebrated as well as the fact it was the final one at Goodison. David Moyes put us in a position where we were comfortably safe, and really we can start to look forwards now, both on and off the pitch, and I really do believe that. I think that performance against Southampton, they talked about it being played like an exhibition out. I think one thing I would say is if you're playing a game at an exhibition pace and you comfortably win it 2-0, we did not get out of first gear. I don't believe. I think there was a flurry we let them have towards the end of the game, maybe tired legs. But honestly, I think we did not get out of first gear and we won that comfortably and actually played some quite nice football at times as well. So to focus briefly on the pitch, I was very happy with what I saw, but it paled in comparison to why everyone was there and why everyone was watching.
Yeah, I think the first 5 minutes the players channeled it perfectly. I think we started
Yeah,
very energetically, and obviously, we get the goal early on, which just settles everything down, and just gets everyone in even more of a jubilant mood. And it's a really nice goal from Ndai, who in particular I thought
yeah,
just looked like a man possessed for most of the first half, like really, really wanting to make an impact. And could have even had a hat trick. That one where he plays it to Beto and Beto kind of scuffs the finish a little bit. And Dye should have shot there, and I think he was almost a bit too unselfish there. And if
yeah.
he puts that shot away, he could get a hat trick on in the last ever game at Goodison, which would have been a real nice bit of Everton folklore. But we had the two disallowed goals for Beto as well, which again were both really well crafted moves, as you say, some really nice football played there. Just the timing a tiny bit off from Beto, like who again you could tell really wanted to score as
He
he
wanted
always
it, didn't
does.
he? Yeah,
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 but in particular, of course, on a day like that. But yeah, you're completely right. It was, you know, I was still a little bit the Everton in me couldn't go away. I was still a little bit like, oh, I kind of think we need just one more, just to
yeah.
make sure. And again, with the 2-0 leads we've had this season, which I don't want to go into anymore. We've discussed it to death, but there was just a little bit of me like, oh, I kind of just want a third here. I don't want Southampton spoiling this in any way. And it was nice for Pickford to get to make a few saves as well and get
Yeah,
really earn his clean sheet in a way. And obviously, he was getting the majority of the songs throughout the game, really getting
brilliant.
serenaded throughout most of it, and you can tell just how much he loves that. But yeah, I almost envy your position there. I would absolutely love to explain to my mum like the meaning behind all the chants that were going on. Just like, oh yeah, that's about Marouane Fellaini, like, and how we'd let him shag our wives, because why not? Like that'd be yeah, that
Yeah,
would
I
be
definitely picked and choose the ones that I picked up on. Luckily, she wears a hearing aid, so I think some of it got missed. But yeah, it was good fun. Just a quick word on Beto, Al. I want to talk. I want to get the balance right on the pod between where we are as a football club and obviously the celebration that was Sunday. There's been so much debate about Beto, so much debate, and there is so much debate going on right now about who stays at the club, who's part of this Moyes rebuild, and who isn't. And I'm fully prepared now to nail my colours to the mast and say Beto has to be an Everton player next season. I think, despite the fact that he is quite clearly born offside, and that's fine. Like, he's not the first Everton striker that has been born offside, by the way. I always remember that Merseyside derby where Joe was up front and he had a hat trick, and all three of them were offside and well offside. But Beto, his work rate. And there was a wonderful passage of play in the second half, I think, where Garner on the break fed Beto. Beto picked out Calvert-Lewin inch perfectly, and it was a tug of the shirt, and Calvert-Lewin a little bit off balance, and it wasn't a shot in the end. But just bits like that Beto does so well, and he's just such a nuisance for defenders. And you know what? I think where we're going to end up with Beto if he stays at the club is He's going to be a 10 goal a season striker, which for a club in our position right now is probably the best that we're going to get. I don't know many 20 goal plus strikers out there that we're going to be in the market for. And also, him distracting defenders, being a handful for defenders means if you've got an Njai that's fully fit, if you've got an Alcaraz that's getting a run in the team, if you've got another winger who's in form, we're going to start seeing goals come from other areas of the pitch as a result of him taking defenders out of play. And I think sometimes we're just too focused on Everton have strikers that don't score goals. And I think actually Beto will, but he'll also do a lot more for the team as well. So I just think on Sunday's performance, it really, maybe it was on a knife edge, but I'm fully prepared to be on the Beto bandwagon for next season. Maybe slightly controversially, let us know in the comments, but I really feel like Beto, because the alternative, Al, is he's going to go to Leeds and score 15 goals and five of them will be against us. So like sometimes it is the better the devil, you know.
Yeah, I do agree. I think he was definitely a standout performer on Sunday, and yeah, I do, especially I think in the last few weeks, because obviously his performances did dip a little bit after the purple patch he had, but I think the last few games he's really, I think he's earned his way like back into the reckoning, and unless I think
Yeah.
unless a very good offer comes in for him this summer, that we could get a serious replacement for like with that money, then I think he probably will be staying, and I do think that's probably the right decision. Obviously
Mm.
the alternative is Calvert-Lewin, which I think the last few days have probably shown that bridge has probably been burnt. And again, I
Yeah.
don't want to focus too much on any negatives in here, but obviously the situation with him and his wife is disgusting, and
Yeah.
it's put a little
100%.
bit of a blight on what should have been a real like good few days for Everton Football Club. But the minority have put a little bit of a blight on that, I'd say, and I do think that does. If the decision wasn't already made, I think the decision is pretty easy for them now, and I think it's just best for all parties now. If if that one comes to an end, which
Yeah.
which probably makes it easier the decision to keep better or not. So
Al, I
yeah.
just think that something that's got to be said, and we won't dwell on it too long. Something that's got to be said here is that you know how we said about David Moyes a couple of weeks ago when we were going for a little bit of a bumpy spell, and we said, look, you can want better from somebody like without wanting them to lose their job. Like I can be frustrated with David Moyes because I hold him to a higher standard. You can also, on the flip of that, and I can't believe we have to say this on a podcast, but you can be critical of a footballer without wishing ill on their family or questioning their lifestyle choices or throwing photos from magazine covers that were happened 5, 6 years ago and using them as slurs. I just think if you don't think that Calvert-Lewin is a very good footballer, by the way, our third highest goal scorer in the Premier League era, but I just think if you don't think he's a very good footballer, if you don't think Jack Harrison's a very good footballer, if you don't think any of them are very good footballers, you can just say you don't think they're a very good footballer to anyone that wants to hear that and listen to you. What you don't have to do is at the members of their family on social media and then come out fighting because they've reported you to the police as if that's some kind of shock. And I can't believe we have to say it. We won't dwell on it too long. But yeah, just be better. Like we can just like talk about football and people's ability or lack of ability. By the way, it's always very funny to me when lots of drunk people talk about footballers' abilities like they could do better. I think there's very few footballers that I've seen in my life where I've looked at them and gone, probably could get in a team ahead of them because I couldn't, I give Jack Harrison stick, but I probably wouldn't keep him out of many football teams. So yeah, I just think be better. And like we've been through a lot as a fan base, and people fail to forget a lot of these players have been through that as well. Obviously, the Decore news has come out today at the time that we're recording, and he's lived and been through all of that as well. And we'll debate whether these players actually care or is it just a paycheck. But they've gone through the last 5 years, players like Calvert-Lewin too. And I just think sometimes it's like be kind and be better and just be not normal for want of a better word.
Mm. Yeah, very well said. I can't really add anything more to that. But yeah, let's lighten the mood a little bit. How
Yeah.
many goals are Newcastle going to stick past us on Sunday?
Mate, well, what is it? If it again at the time of recording, isn't it? If Wolves don't beat, is it Palace they play this
Hmm.
midweek? If Wolves don't beat Palace, we're confirmed 13th. So do you know what? Like, stick the reserves out, stick everyone out of contract out, and just I don't know, have Duncan Ferguson play like he was desperate to, based on what we saw of the coverage on Sunday. Yeah, in all seriousness, I don't care how we're going to preview it because that's what we're here to do. It's going to mean a lot more to Newcastle. I do think be careful what I say here so we don't cause work for anyone having to edit, but I think the general demeanor of Jordan Pickford means if he plays, he's going to want a clean sheet against Newcastle because, as his song says, he's not a big fan of theirs. But what I would also say is, if we get 13th solidified in midweek, Palace do the job over Wolves or whatever. I don't think it's going to matter. And I think David Moyes is going to know that. And I actually think we talked about, didn't we, when we were confirmed mathematically safe? Oh, we've not got a lot to play for. It's going to be hard to motivate. I think it's going to be exceptionally hard to motivate after Sunday. I think they probably gave us everything they had left. And bar one or two maybe wanting to wave to the away fans on Sunday. Yeah, I think it possibly will be a heavy one, but it's really interesting that we could possibly cost Newcastle their highest Premier League finish, or we could cost them a Champions League place if other results go against them. And I'd be well up for that as well. So maybe just the pettiness in me makes me want to think we could win it, but ultimately it's our season's done now, and we can look ahead to next.
Yeah, I completely agree. And as you say, just touching on the fact that we're guaranteed at least 14th and could very easily be guaranteed 13th, and that but in all seriousness, that is an incredible achievement from David
Oh,
Moyes, and
massively,
and
yeah.
the fact he steered us away from relegation so effortlessly, in spite of just how crap the relegated teams have been, which we could do to death. But finishing above United and Tottenham confirmed. It's
Right.
mental. If you told us that at the start of the
Yeah.
season, we'd be thinking, "Wow, bloody hell, where are we finishing here?" But obviously, it's not quite worked out that way, but yeah,
Can we
obviously,
sorry Al, before we move on, can we just jump in? Because I've just pulled up the Premier League table in front of me and I had an inkling that this was right, but I want myself before I put it on the pod. If David Moyes, if we had had 0 points under Sean Dyche, David Moyes' points tally since taking over in January would mean we would still have survived
that's
with a game
mental.
to spare. I think 28 points I read he's got for us since he came back in January. And obviously Leicester are on 25 currently with a game to play. So we would have been all but safe with David Moyes had we have got 0 points under Sean Dyche. So that emphasizes we can all say that David Moyes has done a fantastic job. But that stat alone, that you could start your season in January and still be mathematically safe, says an awful lot, I think, as well.
Yeah, it really does, and yeah, like you said, the Newcastle game, I think we've earned a day off. It's almost like the Arsenal one a few years ago after we gave everything for that
Yeah.
Palace game. Just go there and see what happens. The fans will just be having a bit of a party up at the top of that stupid stand that Newcastle have. But yeah, I honestly think Pickford's almost the main talking point about this. Do you throw him
Yeah.
in and try and distract Newcastle fans from the job they have on hand and put too much emotion into it? I honestly think he won't play. I genuinely think that
Interesting.
I don't think any Everton fan will begrudge him going to the playoff final the day before and
Ah,
maybe
yeah.
maybe putting himself out of action a little bit for the next day, should we say? Um, and I think Virginia has earned a start. I think
Good. Yeah,
I,
good
I,
point.
I
Yeah.
think with it being confirmed he's leaving the club, he's never really got his chance here. But in any game he's played in, he's always had a very solid performance, and
Mm.
and I think he'll go somewhere next season. I either had maybe the top of the championship, that sort of level, or back abroad, and I think he'll go somewhere and be a starter and be a very good player. And I think he's earned the chance maybe to have a proper goodbye and potentially keep a clean sheet and ruin Newcastle's day, which would definitely earn him a few more brownie points with Everton fans before going. Um, So yeah, I don't know. Are there any more faces that you particularly think you want to see on Sunday? Because I honestly think that's all it really is for us. Really, it's just a bit of a
Do we say
sentimentality
this
trip.
is yeah, do we say this is the Trinity game? Do we say, I know we've been calling for it maybe in part, but do we say this is the Trinity game? Beto played very well, didn't he, on Sunday, I think, and he's probably his season's run and let him have a bit of a break. I still think Calvert-Lewin's not match starting fit, so again, it'll probably be him on the bench. I'd like to see Ashley Young play. I know we're looping a bit here. I thought Ashley Young, when he came on for Seamus Coleman on Sunday, was superb, and it actually made me a little bit sad with not giving him a 1 year deal. And we'll get into that on future pods about the contract situations, I'm sure. But I thought Ashley Young played very well, so I'd like to see Ashley Young play. And I wonder, is this the Chimiti game? I think maybe if we're talking free hit and letting Moyes have a look at some other players, maybe he's the other name that comes in.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, as you know, we've mentioned as well about the core as well. I think now the situation's been resolved and it's come to a conclusion. I'd like to think the majority of Everton fans now can ignore the stuff he said on the Fozcast and can just give him the right send off on Sunday, and I appreciate just what he's done for us really in the last 5 years and take all the frustration about the money he's on out because that's just not a worry next season. We can yeah, we can look to get a replacement in for that. So
Yeah.
dare I ask you for a prediction for this? Does it really matter? But
It's a
we might
hard
as
one, isn't
well.
it? And I kind of don't want to predict an Everton defeat, even though I think based on everything we've just said, it quite possibly will be. Let's just go. I don't know. Let's go 2-2. I'll have a Desmond on this podcast, and we'll go to 2-2.
Yeah, okay. I'll be positive as well on that one. I'll say a 0-0. I'll say we'll really frustrate him. Virginia has a
Yeah,
masterclass, and we all really regret letting him go, and he signs for Barcelona or something like that. And
that is what you call a bold prediction. Now, all right.
But yeah, on that note, we'll round off with a lineup quizzes as we always do. Probably the last one of the season, I think. And with it, you know, against Newcastle with the opposition coming up, I've given you one when we played them on the last game of the 2007-2008 season.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
That's a bit more of a smile than we got last week. So yeah, we'll definitely
Mate, I'm still reeling over the Fulham one. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
this should hopefully be a little bit easier for you. So yeah, last day of the season, 3-1 win at Goodison, and yeah, away you go.
Okay, so I'm gonna maybe throw myself off straight away here, but I do think Tim Howard was in goal that season.
That's
Yeah.
one.
I always forget about him, so I'm gonna throw him in nice and early. Did Tony Hibbert play?
He did not, and he was the issue with these older ones is that there's only five subs. This is the year before
Oh, of course, yes, a smaller bench, isn't
the
it?
seven
Yeah.
subs came in, so you've got less chance of him being on the bench, and in this case he
Okay.
wasn't. So
He
that
wasn't.
is a life lost, I'm afraid.
Okay. Oh my goodness. We might need to leave the defense then here and move forward the pitch a little bit. I'm gonna say Osman would have played.
Neil Osman played, yeah.
And this was also a Tim Cahill season, I believe, like one of the earlier ones.
It was a Tim Cahill season. He's just injured, and so wasn't in the squad.
No.
Yeah, that's a bit of a that's a bit of a
It's a
painful
tough one,
one.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Um, did Yakubu played with
Yakubu
Yak
did
up
play.
front?
Yes, the
There we
Yak was
go.
fed. He scored twice
But
in that
he
game. So
love
yeah,
that.
that's three.
Uh, and Arteta would have played.
Ah,
No!
Arteta injured as well. It was a nasty one. We had a lot of our key players
Unbelievable.
missing by this
Yeah.
point in the season, as always seems to be the story when we go to these old boys ones, missing half our squad and still managing to
And
get
still
results.
winning. Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, that's your three lives lost. I'm afraid the bench is very tough when I look at it. To be fair, that's a bit of a painful one because it was the last day. There's a few youngsters on there which we'll get into, but so yeah, so
Okay.
Tim Howard in goal. Phil Neville at right back, captain
Yeah.
aside. You got Jagielka, Yobo, and Joni and Lescott to complete the
Oh,
defence.
the Lescott left back
Yeah,
experiment.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, Leighton Baines actually on the bench. So, um, and then yeah, Osman, as you said, Lee Carsley and Manny Fernandez
What
to
a player.
complete the
Yeah.
midfield. Yeah,
Nice.
proper household name. He should have been there on Sunday. There were far too many people missing, but yeah. Um, and Stephen Pienaar at left wing. And then Vitzer and Ichibi partnering Yakubu up front. So,
Oh
and then
man,
yeah,
what a
the
beast
bench.
the top two.
Yeah, two up front, 4-4-2 standard, 3-1 whenever Newcastle, happy days. And then just to complete the bench, Stefan Vessels, if anyone remembers him, the backup.
Mate, one of my favourite reserve goalkeepers,
Yeah,
Stefan Vessels. I
yeah.
wanted a Vessels top for my birthday that year.
Would have been the only one sold.
Yeah, no.
Um, and then yeah, Leighton Baines, as we said, Jack Rodwell, I think, made his Everton debut that
Mm,
day, coming off the bench.
wow.
Dan Gosling, as we mentioned,
Yeah,
one of my first favourites, and Tommy Gravison, another cult hero,
nice.
to complete the same. So yeah, yeah. On that note, I hope you enjoyed us reliving a really memorable day in Everton's history. Thank you once again for joining me, Harry.
No worries, man. Anytime. And yeah, looking forward to a rare occasion where the last day of the season does not matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully we can spoil Newcastle's party, but it's very much low on the list of priorities. And I'm sure next week we'll dive into a bit more looking ahead to next season. And as you say, the contract situations that we've kind of been avoiding a little bit in the last few weeks. We'll
Yeah.
finally
As the club have as well. So
yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, stay tuned for that one next week. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Comment below, giving your thoughts, your memories of Goodison, and how you found Sunday, whether you were there or watching it on TV. Subscribe to the Toffee Blues channel for more Everton content, and we will see you in the next video. Up the Toffees.